Okay, all right, so we now moved into when Thomas Jefferson becomes president. He basically runs an 1800 election. You know, we have the two parties, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Thomas Jefferson and a guy named Aaron Burr actually tie in this election, and it goes to Congress to vote on. They vote Thomas Jefferson as president, and Aaron Burr became the vice president. So Thomas Jefferson is our president as of 1800. All right, so Thomas Jefferson, he was a simple man, and the fact that he was a simple man meant that he kind of believed the government should be simple, less powerful. The national government shouldn't have so much control. And so he wanted the national government to be simpler and less powerful, so he got rid of some of the taxes, he got rid of some of the programs, he reduced the size of the military, and he paid off a lot of debt. That started the process of simplifying our national government. So one of the big things that happened under Thomas Jefferson was the Marbury versus Madison case, or the process of judicial review. So before Jefferson was elected, John Adams, who was the previous president, he was a Federalist, appointed a bunch of judges who kind of sided on the Federalist side of things. And since judges were appointed for life, Jefferson was kind of stuck with those Federalist judges in the court system, and he couldn't do anything about it. It's something that a lot of presidents do, and Adams was just one of the first ones to do it, but presidents today do that. They'll fill all the positions they can with as many people from their part of the party. So John Marshall was the appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and up until this point, he had kind of said, you know, we strengthen the federal courts, we want to uphold federal authority, we want the national government to be in control, and that's what he did, stronger national government. And so in 1803, there's the case of Marbury versus Madison, and John Marshall ruled on the side of judicial review. And judicial review basically means that the Supreme Court has the final say in interpreting the Constitution. And this was huge. This was huge under Jefferson's presidential election, this idea of judicial review. So if there's nothing else you get from this video, I need you to know this. Judicial review comes from the Marbury versus Madison case. All right, we'll talk more about this case in class. But this ruling, basically, Marshall helped create kind of a unique balance between the three branches. Yes, the Constitution created that balance in itself, but judicial review reinforced it. So it said the Supreme Court was the supreme ruler on all the interpretation of the Constitution. Big, 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 big case. So the next part has to do with expansion, and that's really what this whole unit is about, westward expansion, you know, moving out, expanding the United States. And one of the big purchases we made was the Louisiana Purchase. So the United States citizens were moving out west, and things were getting created. You got the states of Ohio and Kentucky being created, and all this stuff. And there was this big chunk of land kind of down to the south that was being disputed ownership between France and Spain. And before giving the land to France, Spain closed New Orleans port to U.S. shipping, and that just angered Americans. But we had just gotten out of a war. We didn't want to find anybody, so to avoid tension, Jefferson offered to buy just New Orleans, so that the United States could use that as a shipping port for the South. It was a big way for the United States to ship out cotton, any other goods they made in the South, and without having access to that port, it really hurt our economy, so Jefferson offered to buy it. But the French came back and said, hey, not only we'll give you New Orleans, we'll sell it to you, but we want to know if you want to buy the whole territory, the whole Louisiana territory. So Jefferson bought it for $15 million from Napoleon, who was the French ruler, and after that purchase, the U.S. immediately doubled in size. So that was a huge purchase for the United States. Now what you see is, what do we do with all this land? How do we explore it? How do we figure it out? Well, Jefferson put a guy named Meriwether Lewis out to explore it. He chose him to kind of set up an exploration team to figure out the Louisiana territory, which ran all the way from Louisiana all the way up north to like North Dakota and the, you know, kind of the Canadian border up there. So it was a lot of land. So Lewis asked a guy named William Clark, who was a map maker and outdoorsman, to kind of oversee a volunteer group. And the two of them and their team set out, and this became known as the Lewis and Clark Expedition. And they explored the whole part of the Louisiana Purchase. So they started in St. Louis, and they moved towards North Dakota, and they were joined there by an Indian named Sacagawea. And she helped them during their whole exploration process. She was a huge help. She knew the land. She had relationships with Indians that were out there, so it was a big bonus for them to meet up with her. So Lewis and Clark brought back tons and tons and tons and tons of information, but more importantly, they brought back a lot of maps. So that is westward expansion, or how our United States country grew under Thomas Jefferson.